Hi, everyone. Welcome to Adair Live. It's been a while, but we are back. We'll be hosting these every other week to help you get a better understanding of the ins and outs of building your dream home on your land. My name is Carrie Montoya. I'm the marketing manager here at Adair. My co-host today is Jay Sowers. Jay's been with Adair a long time. He's worn many different hats. He is a wealth of knowledge about the home building industry, so we are very lucky to have him here today. How's it going, Jay?
It's going very well. Thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it.
I couldn't even say what your title is now. Do you want to share that with everybody?
Yeah, I actually assist being a director of sales and a senior regional manager for two of our regions, the Portland Metro region, as well as our Eastern Washington region. So I do a little bit of everything.
A busy man. So today we're going to be giving you all an introduction on the on-your-lot home building process and answering any questions you may have around building a new construction home. My apologies if you can hear my daughter. She really wanted to be a part of this show, so
Love it.
She's being pretty vocal about it. So this is the start of a 10-part series that we're going to do. We'll be focusing on the home building process from start to finish. Today, we're going to be giving you kind of a broad overview of building a custom home on your land. And in the coming weeks, you can look forward to learning about things like choosing the right land for your home, the design process, all about financing, and a lot more. So we'll be monitoring the chat. Let us know where you're watching from. Tell us where you're building or thinking about building. Tell us what part of the home building process you're in, whatever stage you're in. We'd love to hear from you. We'd also love to answer any questions you have about building on your land, about financing, design modifications, inspections, site evaluation. Anything and everything is on the table. So put those questions in the chat and we'll get them answered for you. So to start us off, Jay, can you just give us like a broad overview of what it means to build on your lot?
Yeah, so from a broad overview or 30,000 foot perspective, building on your lot really means that from a consumer's perspective, you have a lot identified, right? So we're not necessarily building in a subdivision. So we're building on a piece of property that a customer has identified or brought to us. And then what we do, again, at a very high level, is we assist and help a family in pulling together a total project cost. And I think during this 10-part series, we're going to be talking about things like, well, what about developing the property and site development? And, how much is the structure itself with options, upgrades, features, customization, et cetera. But at the end of the day, building on your lot is, hey, builder, I want to build on this particular property. How much is it going to cost to build this particular floor plan with the features and amenities that I want on that lot? And that's how I would describe building on your lot at a very high level.
All right. So let's talk about some of the components of building that should be considered early on in the planning stages, starting with budget. How do you determine an overall budget? And once you narrow that part down, how do you know how much money to allocate to each category?
It's a great question. So the first and foremost part of that question is really understanding what a customer's budget can be. And there's generally two categories. There's the families that come to us with cash, right? And you may have a cash budget, in which case, okay, let's stick to it. Some families have cash that they want to put down, but we need to finance it. And then other families are, very, very reliant, right? Like my wife and I, we'd be very reliant on financing the entire project. And so I think that at a very high level, Carrie, having resources from a builder that you're choosing to use, right? Here at Adair Homes, we have a partner lender, Adair Financial. But regardless, you want to get pre-approved for a construction loan. A construction loan is, I don't want to get too far off into the weeds here, but that's very different than a mortgage, right? A construction loan is more similar to like a line of credit, right? That we need to go buy land or pay off land with. We need to go fund the development of that property. And then ultimately we need the funds available to provide draws to your builder. So in the end, you have a total project cost and the home is completed. And then that is when your lender will then transfer that construction loan into a 30-year mortgage. So very simple, but slightly different. One simple construction loan does it all.
That's awesome. It's a real game changer having the financing in-house can be a real one-stop shop for our customers that way. So next, let's talk location. So do I have to already own land to work with a builder?
Absolutely not. So most builders, they would want you to come and engage them up front. If you happen to own land, great. Then you might be a step ahead. If you've identified property that you think you want to build on, okay, great. Please engage the builder. Or even if you're just thinking about building, but you haven't even started the land search yet, great, engage your builder. Because what will ultimately happen, Carrie, to kind of circle back to budget, is let's assume for those of us that don't own land yet, right? Well, it's important to engage your builder because it's important to understand what your comfortable total project cost is and what kind of home and amenities you're considering, to be able to understand how much budget we then have to make an offer on a piece of property. Make sense? So I think that, getting pre-approved for a construction loan, which by the way, is no cost and no obligation of any kind, right, is a huge benefit to those of us that are looking at, trying to pull this project together and we don't even own land yet. And so I think that just at a very high level, Carrie, the answer is no, you don't have to have property identified. But how great to be able to understand what my budget would be should I need to purchase land. And another way of saying that is, congratulations, Jay, you were just pre-approved for whatever, 700,000. Awesome. Hey, Adair Homes, as an example, how much is it going to cost for me to be able to build this particular floor plan that I want? Okay, great. Now, how much is it going to cost to develop property? Okay, great. So that means how much do I have left for my wife and I to go look for land? Perfect. I've got about 150,000 or 200,000 of my budget to work with. So sorry for the long-winded explanation, but no, you do not need your location identified. Please come and talk to your builder.
And there's always the possibility to adjust that budget later on, right? So if you find that perfect piece of land and maybe the initial home you've chosen doesn't work for that, that can be adjusted.
Absolutely. I mean, honestly, Carrie, think about it as a teeter-totter, right? The more money we spend on land, right, to honor our budget, the less money we're going to spend on home. Or the less expensive the property, now I can start spending more money on the physical structure itself. So you're correct, fully customizable, and absolutely you can just move money between buckets.
And then can you just give us a couple examples of important things to consider when starting that land search? Like, what should I be looking for in my property?
Yeah, that question gets brought up a lot, and I would say that any builder that you're interacting with should have a very good program or process around honoring the customer with what the industry knows as a feasibility study, right? But I would say that the one thing that can kind of skew the budgets is topography. So if you're looking at property and you need to drill a well, awesome. Well, we can get a bid for a well. Or maybe it's on city utilities. Awesome. We can absolutely understand what a city water meter fee is going to cost. Or if we're looking at the sewer side of things, how much is a septic? Great. Your builder can get you a septic bid. Or we can understand how much your city sewer connection cost is going to be, right? Very, very known. But the one thing that really does skew the budget is topography. So, if we're looking at a property that's relatively flat, then I would argue that depending upon what builder you're choosing, the base price of their home should be good to go. But if you're looking at a piece of property that has some pretty substantial fall to it, that's where the base price or the advertised price of that builder, that base price is not going to honor, substantially sloped lots. And that's where, Carrie, the builder is going to have to budget for what the industry knows as kind of a stepped foundation to kind of step down that hillside. And that's okay, not a problem at all. But there's more concrete, lumber, framing materials, labor, etc., involved in doing that. Okay. Or if the property is sloped enough, okay, now we're dealing with a potentially a daylight basement, and we're adding 700 or 1,000 or 1,500 square feet to the structure, and obviously those can change the dollars and cents of the budget. But all that to say, I know zoning regulations is kind of a bigger, overarching conversation. But when looking for property, the number one thing that we would advise is topography. That is the one thing to look out for that can, I'll just say, alter your budget.
Absolutely, that makes sense. So as far as zoning regulations, this is probably something for somebody who's never built before that, along with site development, is going to be one of the most intimidating. Can you just explain the zoning regulations and permit requirements that a customer might need to be aware of?
Absolutely. So here's probably the hardest part about a builder honoring a customer, is getting the customer to not overthink it, right? Overthinking this is what causes a lot of us to have that, analysis paralysis syndrome, where it's like, see, honey, I told you, let's just go buy an existing home, right? See, I mean, this is just too hard. Well, what I would suggest, and I promise I'm going to answer your question, is as a consumer or a client, right? You want to have a good understanding of, do I want to build on this lot? Do I like this area? Yes or no? And is this builder that I'm working with, can they build on that lot within my comfortable budget? Yes or no? Okay, that's where I would ask for your mindset to stay and for your focus to remain. Okay, but now a slightly different conversation is where the builder needs to get involved. And that's when it comes to zoning regulations. So at a very high level, you and the builder, right? The customer and the builder, we can't just build whatever we want, wherever we want. So now I'll explain. Zoning regulations are in place by local building departments to kind of honor and restrict what can and cannot be built on certain parcels. Okay. So different properties are going to have, I'll use one example, different building setbacks. So think about a relatively smaller or standard lot, which general zoning is like 50 feet wide by 100 foot deep. So those lots are going to have building setbacks, right? Because you can only build so close to a property line. So that 50 foot wide lot that you had technically has a 40 foot wide building envelope. And some areas are different than that. Even on acreage lots, right? Instead of 5 foot building setbacks on the sides, they could be 20 foot setbacks. Well, based on where you and your family want to place the home, we have to be conscious of building setbacks. Another thing to consider is height restrictions. So if you live in a community where there could be some potential views, or you just live in a newer community and you're looking at building on a piece of property, sometimes you're going to have a height restriction, right? So, well, how do I know how tall my home's going to be? And quite frankly, does that start from the street? Does it start from my property line? Does it start from this weird thing called average grade on the property? So these are all things that, you and your builder will work on. Other zoning things, and I'm trying to stay as very high level as possible, could be what are called covenant, code, and restrictions. And those are the things where it's like, okay, you can build here, no problem. However, the home has to look like this. Or a single story home has to be at least 1,800 square feet. Or a two-story home has to be at least 2,400 square feet. Or you have to have at least 700 square feet of rock or masonry on the front exterior of the home. So again, I can go on and on, but at the end of the day, I would ask a consumer to not worry about that. That is where the builder, along with the customer, have to have these conversations during the feasibility phase to make sure that this is going to be a good project for you and your family. And that's where these conversations come up. And going back to my initial comment is, can I build what I want on this lot within my comfortable budget? Make sense? So when it comes to zoning regulations, I would ask you to know that they exist, know that they're out there, but lean on your builder to help make sure that we're doing a very good feasibility study on this particular lot that you want to build on. Hopefully that answers your question, Carrie.
It does. It does. And then some.
Perfect.
But yeah, it's good to have that builder there to kind of hold your hand through these processes that seem really overwhelming. Yeah. And on that note, permitting is another one that we get questions on a lot. Does the builder submit permits, or is that technically a homeowner responsibility?
I will say, Carrie, it depends on the builder that you're working with, right? So that is a great question to ask. Sometimes builders view the customers as the applicant because the customer owns the land, right? Other times, the builder will do a full permit submittal service on behalf of the customer. So I would say that is a question that during your engagement with the builder up front, as you're getting close to maybe signing contracts, those are questions that you should have asked, or the builder should volunteer. So you should be able to know. But at the end of the day, the building permit application is, now that we have all of our zoning regulations figured out, now the builder generally pulls together a full building permit application with all the engineering and this, that, and the other thing needed, and we submit that thing for approval. And this is one of the time restricted aspects of what we call pre-construction. Now that you've signed contracts and you're really excited, now we kind of play a little bit of a waiting game, because the jurisdiction that you're building in, they need time from both a planning perspective and a building perspective, two different departments, to kind of review those plans and provide us any feedback. But at the end of the day, some jurisdictions take a matter of 3 to 5 weeks. Other jurisdictions can take 6 to 8 to 10 weeks. And I'm not going to suggest what other building jurisdictions can take, right? But once your building permits come back, what that's doing is it's saying, okay, consumer, customer, or builder, you're permitted to build this, go. And once we get your approved building permit, we go and we run, and we have to build to the terms of that permit, because the jurisdiction is going to have inspectors out there all along the way, making sure that we're building to that specification.
So I accidentally skipped over the funnest one.
Okay.
Which is, can you tell us a few of the advantages of choosing the build on your lot model?
Oh, how long is this webinar? Do we have, anyway. So yeah, I'm just going to state the obvious here real quick, right? But when it comes to two different buckets, right? There's generally one bucket of flexibility, customization, building on your lot, right? I kind of know what I want. I have certain expectations. Or there's the other bucket of new construction, which is subdivision building. And I'm getting this house on that lot. I have very limited, options, upgrades, features. Like I'm literally signing on to lots 37 plan, right? And here's my, if you engage a company like Adair who doesn't really do subdivisions, right? We're more focused on the flexibility side of things. The advantages are literally endless. Okay, one advantage, because I'm a conservative person, is budget. So most builders that build in subdivisions, okay, how do they price their homes? Okay, it's totally fine and no harm, no foul, but they price their homes based on market value. And whatever the market will bear for Plan B on lot 37, that's the price of that project. And so the day you move in, congratulations, it's brand new and beautiful. And I'm really happy for you. But at the end of the day, how much equity do you have? Arguably, you have zero equity because you just bought this brand new, beautiful home in that community at fair market value. Okay, over here on the other side of the house, advantages of building on your lot, right, is generally speaking, the pricing strategy has nothing to do with fair market value. The pricing strategy has to do with, hey, builder, I've got the lot or I'm buying the lot. But hey, builder, what does it cost you to build this floor plan? And now you're asking the builder to get clear on their cost. Well, cost plus margin. But appraised value doesn't come into it. So now you as a consumer, now we're going to talk about this thing called equity. And that's where a whole number of builders, I would like to think Adair is the best, but a whole number of builders, that's where you can build on your lot at known pricing from your builder. Hopefully your builder guarantees their pricing, and you're able to build equity. And you're able to build this entire thing for $550,000, but in this market, it's appraising for $700,000. And there's your equity position. That's the first advantage, arguably one of the larger. The other advantages is what I discussed, but it is flexibility, right? So if Carrie and her husband come to us and say, okay, I have a lot that I own, or I have a lot that I'm thinking about building on. Hey, Jay, hey, Adair, this is what I want. Okay, now I have Carrie's budget, and we're talking about single story, 2-story. We're talking about home orientation and facing the view and adding windows and customizing. And I got to definitely have a 3rd bay garage, right? And so we're able to completely, retool and work within Carrie and her husband's comfortable budget to get them the home that they want. So, arguably the second biggest trigger here of advantages is flexibility, right? And then I would say kind of the third bucket is a little bit more vague, but it's really about getting what you want. Because especially for those of us that don't have the land yet, think about it like this. If you have an appreciation for acreage, and that's my love, my love of building in the country. Okay, let's go spend 70% of your budget on land. And we're going to build a gorgeous, modest home on that property. It may be 1,500 square feet. Okay. Or, no, I don't like land and I don't like yard work. And that's not me. Right. Okay, perfect. Then let's go spend 80% of your budget on a big, beautiful home and keep the land purchased relatively small and tight. Right. So it's just, there are multiple advantages of building on your lot. Those are a few, Carrie.
Yeah, it's really emphasizing your vision of home.
Yep.
It's not going to have to make those concessions like you might with a existing home. So moving on to custom built and pre-designed homes. Can you tell us what the difference between these two are, and does the process change depending on what path is chosen?
Great question. So we get this constantly. To custom built versus pre-designed, right? What's the difference? I don't get it, right? Okay, so generally in the marketplace of new home construction, custom built is defined by, okay, here's a blank napkin. What do you want to build? Let's go. And we're essentially starting from scratch. because we've never built this home before. Is that fair? Okay. Pre-designed means, okay, come here a minute, Carrie, sit down. So we've got like 37 different floor plans that are not only pre-designed, but we already know how much it costs to build those homes. Oh, and by the way, we've already engineered these plans because these structures already exist, and we've actually already built these homes. So we're dealing with known pricing. Fair? Okay, so now let's talk about the two different paths. Staying on the pre-designed path, we're going to be able to execute contracts with you and your family much sooner. Why? Because we're dealing with known pricing, and we have known options and upgrades: vaulted ceilings, patio covers, third bay garages, gourmet kitchens, right? Where do I stop? All of these with your builder should be click button options, because we are dealing with a known structure with known pricing. And for those of us that are really excited about the floor plans that your particular builder has, and I'll tell you what, those floor plans work beautifully for me. In fact, I love that floor plan right there. Okay, well then go. And you're going to save two things. You're going to save time and money. Okay? But when it comes to the fit and finish of that pre-designed home, it is identical to a custom built home. Same siding, same roofing, same windows, same quartz, same cabinetry, same. So I don't want anybody that sees this or listens to this to feel that like, oh, a pre-designed home is, somehow built differently than a custom home. That is not the case. You're just going to save time and money. Okay, custom built. Going back to that blank napkin. Okay, we have to work with the customer. Now, this is the time component I'm talking about, okay? We have to work with the customer, which is all fun and exciting. And quite frankly, I love this path. And we get to design a custom home. And most builders will actually require a very small deposit up front. And let's go have fun. And we have to go work with our design teams to bring this floor plan to life. Once the floor plan is brought to life, we then have to go and work with our purchasing or construction, right, operations team and say, okay, now that we have this floor plan designed, hey guys, team, how much is it going to cost? And that's when your builder will work with their, siders, electricians, plumbers, framers, drywallers, etc. And they'll pull together with either hard costs or estimates. They'll pull together what the builder believes it's going to cost to build this custom home. Another thing to consider is pre-designed homes generally are able to save you money because they are generally designed for cost savings. But in the picture on the left, a custom home, we're not necessarily focused on, budget savings. Sometimes we're focused on, this looks really cool. This is what I want. And so on a custom home, you could have like very large beams in the floor to support that second story because of open space to below and load bearing and kind of some of the nuances that we're after. Whereas a pre-designed home, the second story walls are generally stacked on top of first story walls to save all that engineering cost and expense. So all that to say, the custom home process, generally speaking, will cost a little bit more money because the builder is dealing with unknowns. And just because it looks good on paper does not mean that that's how it's exactly going to come together out in the field, right? And we're dealing with time because this floor plan doesn't exist. So we have to go design it and we have to go price it, right? To be able to bring it to life. So at a very high level, Carrie, that is how I would explain the two paths. But from a construction, fit, and finish perspective, the same builder building both are going to have the same fit and finish.
That's great. Thank you, Jay. And moving on to construction, can you walk us through just a brief overview of the construction process?
Oh, I love it. You even gave me a cheat sheet to work with over there to the right. Look at this. I just feel like this is getting easy. All right. So Carrie and I already talked about the upfront process of budgeting, planning, and now the assumption is that okay, this works. Let's go into contract and let's go ahead and move forward, right? There is a pre-construction process, which we talked about, right? The building permits, the planning, the funding of the loans, and those types of things. So specifically, what Carrie's asking me now to put this into context is, okay, what is the construction process, right? So now we're through the first two phases and we're into construction. So first and foremost is once your building permits are approved, that's generally the trigger for the construction process. Okay, congratulations. The building permits were just approved last night at 4:30 p.m. and we are all super excited. So the first thing that's going to happen is we're going to start developing the property, right? This is where excavation is going to begin. They're going to be bringing in, the builder, right, is going to be bringing in roadways, what the industry knows as temporary utilities, right? Water, power, prepping for septic systems as needed. Depending upon your job site, the septic system may be installed during this phase, or the septic system may be installed after rough plumbing. It just depends on the build, right? But all that to say, we're going to start developing the property and getting that untouched site with trees, shrubbery, whatever. We're going to get it ready for new home construction. The first contractor to show up, known as vertical construction, is your foundation contractor. And that's when they're going to come out. We're going to start pouring the foundation. And I promise, every foundation I've ever seen looks too small. You look at it and you're like, wait a second, I thought I was building a big one-story home. Look how small that thing looks. I don't get it either. Don't understand. But anyway, the foundation gets poured, and then that defines the beginning of the vertical construction process. Framing is then delivered, and here we go. After framing goes up and the roof trusses and everything go on, we're now ready for what are called mechanicals. And that is when everything from your interior utilities, electrical, plumbing, and HVAC, those are known as mechanicals. That's when all of that stuff comes in, right? We're having all inspections, big inspections at this point, because what comes next is drywall. And once you sheetrock those walls, you've just lost access to all your electrical, plumbing, and everything, right? So we're looking at getting all the what are the front end mechanical inspections signed off and passed. The home goes into drywall, and then now it looks like a truly finished home. That's when we start bringing in all the interior color into the home, starting with paint. And once the paint is in, right, now we're going to start doing all the finishes. I will say, depending upon your builder, some builders choose to set all the trim and cabinetry and then bring in the painter. That's fine, not a problem. It generally depends on the painting contractor and what they prefer. But all that to say, the entire home comes together in a very short period of time, and you're finally able to move in. When I say a short period of time, let me put that into context. Here at Adair Homes, we generally do a very good job of building your home in about 6 to 8 months, okay? It takes a handful of months to do all the upfront work, get all the inspections passed. And then again, once we start getting into drywall, then it takes, at least a couple of months to everything, to set cabinets, to set flooring, trim, all the extra, the lighting, the plumbing, and all the things it takes inside the home. So that generally, this can take about 6 to 8 months. Depends on where you're at. And obviously it depends on what builder you're using. Some builders are much longer than that.
You stole my thunder there, Jay. I like to do a big build up to the how long does this all take question.
I am so sorry. I feel like I failed you and our guests at this point. So
that's okay. That's all right. We'll let it slide this time. We did get one question.
Okay.
Is the septic design process handled by Adair?
Oh, it's a great question. So generally speaking, it is the financial responsibility of the customer, right? Because that's one of the things that's going into the budget. But when it comes to the septic design, yes, Adair Homes is going to step in and help, right? We are running a couple of different programs when it comes to site development. So I would ask you to reach out to your local Adair Homes office. to figure out how involved you would want to be. We have something known as limited site services, etc. I don't want to bore anybody with that. But at the end of the day, Adair Homes is here to help, guide, mentor, lead, and direct, and help you get your septic designed. It generally starts with a very simple perk test, and that's where the customer, because we're not into contract yet, Adair has not received any money yet. Generally, the consumer pays a very small fee. It could be $1,000 or so, depending, and an excavator will come out and dig perk holes. That's known as a perk test. So now a soils engineer, and that's going to cost, maybe a couple $1,000s. A soils engineer comes out and says, okay, based on this soil that I can now see because of this hole in the ground, you're going to need this type of septic system. And that's known as a septic design. So now the designer says, okay, so for that type of soil, you need this type of system. And here's how much that's going to cost. So long-winded way of saying your builder should be heavily involved on that side.
Awesome. So she also is saying that in her area, the permitting process takes about 4 months. So what's going on with the build while permitting is being processed?
That is a great question. And I would unfortunately say not much. Depending upon the builder that you're working with, some builders will ask you to finalize your interior color selections. Again, it depends on the builder. I know here at Adair Homes, we ask our customers to pick the things that they want in their home. Like, do you want granite? Yes, no. Do you want hardwood flooring? Yes, no. And then during this waiting process of the building permits being approved, et cetera, that's when we bring our customers back in, now that we're a few months later, and we can kind of just clear our minds and just focus on design. And now that you've selected granite, okay, perfect. What color of granite? Now that you've selected your luxury vinyl plank flooring, perfect. What color of flooring? So to answer your question, I would say that sometimes color selection meetings and things of that nature are going on. Depending upon the lender that you're using, I'm going to tread lightly here. You're working with your lender and you're funding loans. Some loans need to be funded before building permits are approved. Others are funded after, but just generally speaking, you can be funding loans. If you own your own property, one final thing is that generally the jurisdictions won't allow us to excavate, right? You can't start moving dirt, but prior to the building permit, some jurisdictions will allow you to start kind of prepping the property, kind of grubbing it, getting rid of blackberries and shrubs and those types of things. But I'm embarrassed to tell you, while we're waiting on the jurisdiction to approve your building permit, it really is a waiting game. There's not a whole lot of heavy lifting during that process.
Don't want to end up with any fines, right?
Yeah, that is true.
All right. So just to recap, we discussed some advantages to building on your lot, some things to consider when searching for that perfect piece of property, the difference between custom and pre-designed homes, and just a general overview of that construction process. So now is the time. If anybody has any more questions, feel free to put those in the chat and we will get them answered. As a reminder, you can join us in 2 weeks to learn more about finding the right land for your home. Make sure you're following us on Facebook and YouTube so you don't miss any of our upcoming live events. And it looks like that's about it. So thank you so much for joining us today. We hope you guys found this information useful. If you still have questions, you can head to our website at www.adairhomes.com. Interact with us via live chat, and we will see you all next time on Adair Live. Thank you for being here.
Thanks, everybody.